Welcome to The Human Experience, a podcast about the stories we live out every day and the importance of championing the vulnerability and courage of the storyteller. I'm your host, Jennifer Peterkin, and it was through my own lived story of experiencing domestic violence that this podcast was created. By traveling the globe and interviewing each guest in person, I am convinced now more than ever that stories have the power to change the world. You can join our community of storytellers by subscribing, leaving a rating and review, signing up for my newsletter, following me on Instagram, and more. Thank you for being here. In a world full of noise, to listen with intention is an act of resistance. Episode 57 of The Human Experience is Alisa's story. Alisa is the definition of a survivor. You may or may not already be familiar with her story, as the trial against her ex-husband for her kidnap and rape was broadcast on several crime networks. She appeared on the show 48 Hours and has also been the subject of several true crime podcasts. Alisa's story is harrowing and at times difficult to listen to, but I implore you to try, because as outrageous as it sounds, there are many parts of her story that are normalized and commonplace. Alisa is now a speaker, author, and advocate for victims of domestic violence, bringing hope and healing to survivors, and changing the stigma and narrative in our culture that allows domestic violence to perpetuate. Because of the length of her story, Alisa's episode will be released in 2 parts. This week is part 1, and next week we'll release part 2. As a trigger warning before we begin, this episode contains graphic conversations around domestic violence, physical violence, rape, and suicide. Please proceed with care. This episode was recorded in Westchester, Pennsylvania. Alisa, you have quite an interesting story. I don't know if interesting is the word you would use to describe it, but when you talk about personally, what is your story? What does that mean to you? Like, I know you, and we'll get into this, but you are telling your story quite a bit and in different mediums. So what does it mean to you to be able to share your story and to kind of start from where you want to start from?
Yes. So in my book, and I've just recently completed my book, it's in editing. It was really hard to find a starting point of the story because there was multiple climaxes within the story. And so people who have gone through and read some of this story, the first 6 chapters, they realized very quickly that it was 2 stories running parallel.
Okay.
So I'll start in the first part of it.
Okay. Yeah.
So in 2016, I left my husband. I was married for 16 years, and I started realizing that something wasn't right. Things just were not adding up. I'm a devout Christian, and so I really prayed about it. I had this feeling prior in the marriage several times before, and it seemed that every time this arose, there was some explanation of why I was feeling that way. We'd go into Christian counseling multiple times, and he'd always kind of explain it away. And so I really just stopped and prayed, and I said, God, please show me what I don't know, because I don't know what I don't know. And I need you to just show me what it is I need to see. And I went to the pastor of my church and I said, I really think that there's something going on with my husband. And I really don't know what it is, but things aren't adding up. And I just want you to be aware. And I asked him to reach out to past pastors. We had moved around a lot around the country. My ex-husband up and moved us every few years.
Military or just because?
Just because.
Okay.
He felt that, we are being called to start a business in this area of the country.
Yikes.
Yes. Little did I know it was because he was doing very shady businesses and burnt all of his bridges and needed to up and move us.
Wow.
I was a stay-at-home homeschool mom in a very fundamental type church.
Okay.
Yes. So it was very common for women to not know what was going on in their husbands' businesses. stay at home. Your job is raising the children. And we had 5 children. So very busy. And so in 2016, when I just had this feeling that some things weren't right, I really was prayerful about it and went to the pastor and asked him to pray for me, pray over the situation, and to kind of look into my husband.
Okay.
And that went on for about a month of just really looking into things. And during that time, God really started opening my eyes that still didn't know that I was in domestic violence, but knew that things weren't right. So I tried to leave and he attacked me. And I ended up getting out. I talked him down and told him, you need to calm down. I need to calm down. I'm going to go to your parents' house. And he would always move his parents around with us.
Oh, wow.
Wherever he took us, because it was kind of like his parents would be with him and his parents, 3 adults against 1.
Mm-hmm.
So I told him I was going to go over to his parents' house. He let me take the car and 4 of the 5 children, no cell phone, no nothing, and just thought I was driving over to his parents' house. But I didn't go to his parents' house.
Good for you.
I drove around knocking on friends' doors in the middle of the day, trying to find someone that could help us. And I ended up at a deacon and his wife's house, and they took me and the kids in.
Wow.
And this deacon, he was raised as a child where his mother was in an abusive marriage. And every time his mom got away, church leaders came and put his parents back together.
Yeah.
And he said, I'm not going to be that person.
Mm.
And so him and his family, he has grown sons, and they all kind of looked out for us. And about a week later, I ended up going into the domestic violence shelter because we started really finding some things out, and there was a lot of fear going on around my ex-husband, at the time my husband. And the pastor had talked to previous pastors and had heard of the things that my ex-husband had been doing. Mm. And the pastor said, do not trust him. And he asked about whether or not to trust Alisa. And they said, she does not know what is going on. He hides many things from her, and she needs to be protected.
Wow.
And it's one of those things where you don't realize how big the web really is until after you're away from that influence. And I think a lot of these pastors didn't realize how big Trevor's web was until maybe years after we were gone. So I went into the domestic violence shelter. I filed a protective order, and I was not believed. So for 6 months, I was terrorized by my ex-husband. During that time, I filed multiple protective orders. I called the police multiple times. They did not believe me. They said that this man wouldn't hurt a fly. He's not stalking you. He's just trying to bring you a Starbucks coffee. He's just trying to be nice to you. They made excuses after excuses. The final one before I was kidnapped was 6 months after I got out of the shelter. Now, I was in the shelter for 3 days, and I got myself a job, got a house, got a car, because I had nothing but the clothes on my back, me and my kids. And for 6 months, I rebuilt my life, not taking a dime from my ex-husband, no child support, no help whatsoever. And I finally felt like, wow, I can do this. It was a struggle, but I can do this. And that caused him to be even more enraged. Yeah. That I had this confidence that I could do it without him. And he called me saying that he had accepted that the marriage was over, and he was going to give me a marriage settlement agreement, and that he had a notary, and that I just needed to come and sign this agreement. And he was going to give me a check and alimony and child support and all these other things. So I went and we signed a marriage settlement agreement, and the notary left. And as soon as the notary left, he pulled a knife on me and held me at knife point for 6 hours. I thought that I had talked him down and calmed him down, and he had let me go. And I called the police, and the police did not believe me. They said, you have a history of calling the police, of asking the courts for protective orders, and there's no evidence of any of this. You're just out for money, and that is why you are trying to drag this man's name through the mud.
Wow.
And they threatened to throw me in jail for making false police reports. And I said, no, I would not drop the charges. I wanted an investigation. And they said, oh, there's going to be an investigation. There's going to be an investigation into you. And I said, I don't care, because I know with God as my witness, this is what is going on. This is happening. I filed another protective order. And then 3 weeks later, when the incident of him holding me at knife point happened and the police didn't believe me, my children were with him while I was being questioned by the police. He drove over to my house and took the children to his house. And so when I told the police officers, please go get my children, and they said, no, that's a civil matter. They're with their father, and that's where they're staying. Mm. So I had to file to get my children back. For 3 weeks, I did not see my children. During the 3 weeks, he parental alienated the children by saying that I had mental health problems, and the courts don't believe me, and the police don't believe me, and none of my friends believe me. And see, all of this evidence is pointing at your mom is making things up. And so my children believed him, and that allowed him for 3 weeks to just really indoctrinate them into, hey, I can help mom. I need your guys' help so I can help mom. Mm. I can put our family back together. All I need to do is help mom. And I just need to be able to get to talk to her. And once I talk to her, everything will go back to normal. And she'll be able to get the help that she needs, and our family will get fixed. So 3 weeks after he had held me at knife point, my oldest daughter, Arden, called and said, Mom, we really miss you, and we want to come and see you. And I said, okay. And I couldn't go near his house, and he couldn't come near my house. So he dropped them at a playground, and I was up the street. And then after he had left, I went and picked my kids up from the playground, and I took them back to my house. It was only 3 of my 5 kids that came. And I kept asking, well, where are the other kids? Oh, well, he's taking them fishing, and they'll come next week. We just needed to spend some time with you. Okay. So we watched movies, and I went to bed, and 2 of the children, 5 and 7 years old, wanted to just be close to me. They wanted to sleep in bed with me, so I let them. So I was in between the 2 of them in bed, and we went to sleep about 9:00. And I was startled awake. I mean, deep sleep, startled awake, and my face was wet. And I looked over at my alarm clock, and it was 3 a.m. exactly. And there was a dark figure in my room. And I started screaming, who's in my room? Who's in my house? What do you want? And this dark figure went up against the wall, like trying to blend in with the wall. And I'm screaming. And he said, calm down. It's just me. I knew exactly who it was. I started throwing things from my end table at him, grabbed me by my ankles and pulled me off of the bed, dragging all of the bedding and the 2 kids as well as me. And they're screaming as we're being dragged off of the bed. And he is dragging me by my ankles down the hallway. And they are running after, screaming, "Daddy, Daddy, don't kill Mommy." And he looked up. He stopped dragging me and he looked up at them and he goes, "Get back in your mother's bed and don't come out." And he dragged me into the living room and he threw me around in the living room. And every time I would get somewhat close to the front door, he would grab me and pull me back and throw me again. This went on for about 2 hours. Throughout some of it, I would get so tired out and he would pin me down that I would just stop struggling, just trying to catch my breath. And I would hear the kids from my room call out, "Mommy." They were checking to see if I was still alive. And I'd call back, "It's okay. I'm all right." And I'm thinking, where's my older daughter, my 14-year-old daughter? At this point, I don't know that she had unlocked the window, let him in. And as he climbed through the window, she then climbed out of the window and walked down the street to his car waiting at the community center at the end of the street. And she was just sitting in his car with her brother, her 12-year-old brother. Her 3-year-old brother, I did not know until much later, had been left at Trevor's house. He had left him because it would be too hard to pull off a kidnapping with a 3-year-old. Oh, God. So the 12-year-old and the 14-year-old were sitting in the car, not knowing that for 2 hours I was being attacked in the house. Eventually, I was so tired out. He had me held down in the living room, far away, kind of farthest from the door. And the older two came in and took the younger two out of the house. Once all the kids were out of the house, he tied me up to my bed. And he had scarves tied all around his belt loops of his jeans. And it looked like he had this skirt on him. And so when we were struggling, I knew that there were things all tied on him. And he used them and he put a sock in my mouth. And then he tied a scarf around my mouth. And he tied my wrists together and he tied my ankles together. And then he pulled this black nylon rope from his pocket and he tied me to the bed frame crisscross across my body. And then he left and he came back in with Christmas lights that he had gotten from my garage. And he wrapped those, the Christmas lights he had used to crisscross my body, the black nylon he had used to wrap around the rest of my body. Then he took my vacuum cleaner and took the cord of my vacuum cleaner and wrapped that around the mattress, straight around that underneath the bed, over top of me. And I was tied like that for several hours, about 3 hours. Then he came in and he took the scarf off of my face and took the sock out of my mouth. And I asked, "Where are my kids?" And he said that his parents had come and taken them. Found out later that he had the 14-year-old drive 45 minutes in the middle of the night with her 3 other siblings in the car so she could get home to the 3-year-old before he woke up. So I didn't find that out until after I was found alive. But at this point, when he took this off and told me that his parents had come and picked the kids up, he told me what his plan was. His plan was that he was fleeing the country. He had chartered a boat into international water and he had money in offshore bank accounts. And that he was just came to say goodbye to me. He said, "I'm going to make a video for you. Because no one's believed you, when I disappear, they're not going to believe you. So I'm going to record a video letting them know that, yes, you weren't lying for 6 months. And yes, I did break into your house. Yes, I did tie you up, but you are virtually unharmed. So I had recently gotten an iPhone about 3 weeks right after the situation happened of him holding me at knife point. I had switched to an iPhone after that. And he recorded this on my phone. He didn't think about the fact that it would save to the cloud when he erased it. He also recorded a separate video, which he went into the other room and recorded a video to the children in which he told them that, yes, he is a liar and a manipulator and that he has manipulated them into letting him into my house. Yes. Then, after he was done making the videos, he untied me and had sex with me.
He didn't have sex with you.
Yes, that came up later.
Okay.
The parallel story to all of this happening is 6 years later, we finally had his trial, his criminal trial.
You just had this a couple years ago then.
In 2022.
Oh my gosh.
I did not share my story until after the trial happened.
Okay.
To protect and preserve the case and preserve the story. So, yes, every time I talked about it, I referred to it as sex. Mm. And even during the trial, I referred to it as sex until I was really pushed, in which he said, did I push you? Did I hold you down? Did I force you to have sex with me? And my answer was yes. You did push me. You did hold me down. You did break into my home. You attacked me and tied me up and then had sex with me. That is rape. That is the definition of rape. So that was the first instance. After he had finished, he then laid me on my stomach and hog-tied me. It was the most awful shooting, excruciating pain through my back, legs, arms, everything. And he had put duct tape over my mouth. I was having a hard time breathing because of the position and not being able to breathe through my mouth, and I was congested. So he came in and pushed me over onto my side, but I was still hogtied. And he had took the duct tape off. I wasn't in as much pain that time on the side. But I was like that for about 3 more hours. So 3 hours. Yeah. And then he came in, untied me again, and raped me a second time. The third time he tied me up was similar to the first, except this time he had also put a sheet around my body, cocooned, and then used the black nylon tape around a nylon rope around that. And then he used the Christmas lights again, but not the vacuum. He told me that it was time for him to leave, to go get the boat that he had chartered. It was starting to get dark. He said that once he was out into international water, my best friend Jennifer would be called and told, and so she would come and untie me. He put on a TV show that he thought I would like for me to watch and left. Or I thought he had left.
Oh, God.
About 30 to 40 minutes later, he came back into my room, the pillow behind his back, came in and pushed it down over my face. He pushed with all of his upper body strength, until that didn't seem to be enough for him. And he actually straddled my face on top of the pillow as I was struggling to breathe and as I knew I was at my last breath. I thought, this is it. This is when I go to meet Jesus. And I lost consciousness. I have what's known as anoxia. It's from lack of oxygen during trauma. I say it's kind of like having something on the tip of your tongue, but it's kind of on the tip of your brain. Like, you can think of what you want to say, but you just can't get it out to your mouth. It's much better now, but I said it's having like a brain hiccup.
Yeah.
You can't think sometimes of what you want to express and say. So I lost consciousness, and when I came to, the pillow was on my face, but there was no pressure. And don't know if I was moving my head, but he could tell I was not dead. And he lifted the pillow, and I started begging, please, please. And he said, please, you'll go with me then? I said, yes, please, I'll go with you. He untied me. But one of the things with the lack of oxygen is you lose feeling to your extremities. So I had no use in my arms and my legs. He got my suitcase from the garage. He packed it. He put me in warm clothes. He tied my hands behind my back and put a blanket over my shoulders. And then he helped me to the car. And I say helped because I couldn't walk to the car. Mm-hmm. He put me into my car because his car was gone. He put me into my car. He fastened the seatbelt. He walked the 2 or 3 steps to my front door because my car and my front door, I was in a little house that I had gotten that I could afford. And he had put my suitcase like right outside the door, and he grabbed it and I watched him put it into the car. And he had put my purse in the car and he locked my front door. And we drove. And he pulled into a Walgreens. He had been drugging me all day with NyQuil and had gone through an entire bottle of NyQuil, drugging me. So he was out of NyQuil and he wanted me to be sedated again. So he took cash out of my wallet from my purse and he went in to the Walgreens. I sat there with my hands tied behind my back, buckled into the passenger seat. And I thought, if I could just get out of the car, now's my chance. I used my hands, my fingers behind me, and I was able to maneuver in a way that I could get the seatbelt unbuckled. And then I turned and I tilted my body and leaned forward so my hands would be up where the door handle was. And I pulled it and I pushed against the door. And I started screaming and stumbling and trying to run through the parking lot, and the blanket fell off of my shoulders. Next thing I know, my ex-husband's out into the parking lot, grabs me, throws me back into the car, and takes off. As I was screaming, help me, he's going to kill me, a Walgreens employee who was outside saw and got my license plate number and called 911 as we were pulling out of the parking lot and read them the number as we were leaving. There's video of this happening in the Walgreens parking lot. When the police ran my license plate, they saw 6 months of me saying this is happening, asking for help, and not being believed. They did a photo lineup with the Walgreens employee. My ex-husband's picture was in the pack. And he clearly pointed out my ex-husband. There's video of the Walgreens, of him walking into the Walgreens. Clear as day, it is him. Video of him in the parking lot, chasing me, getting me, and putting me back into the car. So he took off, drove through a very secluded area in the middle of nowhere. There were no cars. There was no lights. There was nobody. Drove down a dirt road. There was a dilapidated barn. And we were about 2 hours south of where we lived, that he drove down there. And he drove down this dirt road to like a clearing. And there was a bulldozer. It was like they had just cleared the land to build a home there. Across from us, there was a ravine. And then up the ravine, later I found out there was a farm. We could see the tops of the tractors, but we couldn't really see the tractors later in the day. Before we arrived, though, at this spot, he was furious. My ex-husband was furious that I got out of the car in the Walgreens. He made 2 stops in the middle of nowhere. First, he pulled down into where one of those cattle fences are, and he pulled up this lane, dirt path, driveway of sorts, up to right where the cattle fence was. He got out, and he threw my cell phone. He drove back down another way. It's so dark, so country. And he drove over this like little creek, but it was a bridge to get over the creek. And he pulled a U-turn and pulled over there. Heavily wooded area. And he pitched his phone there. They never found his phone. They did find my phone, but he threw his phone there. And then he pulled me out of the car there at that spot. And I thought, if he kills me here and dumps my body in these woods, they're never going to find me. Mm. My hands are still tied behind my back. And he slit my wrist. And he said, "That's for getting out of the car at the Walgreens." And he put me back into the car. My hands are still tied behind my back. I don't know how bad it is, but I can feel the blood pouring out of my wrist. And I used the back of my shirt and I just put pressure against my wrist all night long. When we pulled into the clearing by the farm in the ravine, he went to sleep. And I thought, this is where I'm going to bleed out. There's no place for me to run. There's no place for me to go. I am far off of a road, way down a dirt road, off of a beaten path. I can't climb down through that ravine, up onto that ravine. And what do I find on the other side of the ravine? I have no idea. I thought about pushing the OnStar button, but I knew if I push that, they're going to come on the speaker and he's going to kill me before anybody's going to be able to get to me. Mm-hmm. So I sat there all night, didn't sleep, bleeding. The next day, this was Sunday. He broke into my house on Friday night. I went to sleep on a Friday night. Now it's Sunday. We're on this farm. My Bible was in my car. I never left my Bible in my car. And it was one of those things where I had it, used it, went to a Bible study, and I just didn't carry it in. And it was in the back seat of my car. And that gave me hope to know, okay, I don't have a phone. I don't have anything with me, but I have my Bible with me. So I spent, time listening to him ramble on and on about nonsense. And he encouraged me to read my Bible because he thought that's how he had control of me for all of those years. Was God would tell me I can't leave my husband. God hates divorce. And so he was fine with it. But the time that I spent in that car with him and praying, God, I didn't die when I got suffocated. I didn't die when my wrist got slit. I can keep going. I can keep going. And he raped me 2 more times in the car on that day. We didn't have water. There were some empty water bottles, some dried cranberries in the car, and a couple of breakfast bars, granola type bar. We walked around the area trying to find water and realized that there was a farm on the other side of the ravine. And he said, once night comes, we're going to walk over to the farm and fill these water bottles. So he did. He took me on a hike. Jeez. Down the ravine with my slit wrist. He had cut my shirt and used it as a bandage and bandaged my wrist. But he had to assist me getting down into the ravine and then back up the ravine. And then as we walked into the farm, the fields were so wet that it sucked your feet down into the mud. Mm-hmm. And it was hard. So we had to walk around the perimeter of the farm. We were covered in mud up to our knees. And it was a full moon. And that is the only light that was out there. Mm-hmm. It was such a bright moon that night, and we walked and we found an outhouse, and they had a sink on the outside of the outhouse, and we filled our water bottles. And then we walked back to the car, and he started listening to the news in the car, and he kept changing stations and changing channels. And he says, nope, there's nothing on the news about you being missing. I think we're fine. And he decided on Monday morning to drive. He first drove to a McDonald's because we hadn't really had anything to eat. And he told me that if I alerted anyone at the McDonald's that he would slit my throat. And I didn't. I sat there in the passenger seat, not alerting anyone. He went over to the gas station across the street, made me move to the very back row. It was a 3-row SUV. Moved to the 3rd row. And he watched me as he went inside and got a newspaper. He went in barefoot because his shoes were covered in mud, and he was in a pair of my Ann Taylor shorts. Oh, I love saying that this man was in Ann Taylor shorts because he had packed my suitcase. He had his suitcase packed at his house. But because I got out of the car at the Walgreens, never stopped at his house to get his suitcase. So he had to wear my shorts. And he came back to the car. We drove to an island off of Sarasota called Anna Maria. Mm-hmm. And the entrance of Anna Maria Island, there was a police officer sitting there. You would think maybe this is when she gets rescued. No.
Oh my gosh.
He saw the parking lot just before the police officer, place where people fish and launch boats and things like that. And so he pulled into there. We ate the McDonald's. I had to go pee. I said, can I get out and go pee? And he said, absolutely not. Pee in the McDonald's cup in the car. So I did. He waited for the officer to move. And when he moved, that's when we went on to Anna Maria Island. He told me that he needed to find the safe house. It was a house in which they smuggled people in and out of the country with no papers, no questions asked. And this is how he had chartered the boat. And all these houses on the island, many of them had their own boat slips behind the house. So he told me, well, no, it's the right house. It's the green and yellow flag. And so he drove around while I looked for a green and yellow flag. He told me that if I helped him to find the house, he would let me go. Once he was out in international water, once he had found that house, I could go because I was going to need medical attention. At this point, when we were sitting at the entrance to Anna Maria Island, when we were waiting for the police officer to move, that's when he told me that he was going to leave me behind so I could get medical attention. He wrote out a written confessional. He wrote out multiple different letters. Things like leaving me his house, leaving me his car, leaving me full custody of our children, surrendering his parental rights. He handwrote all of these in the car while we were waiting for the police officer to move. So we drive around and he says, I can't find the safe house here, but I know exactly where the other safe house is, up in Ruskin. Now, Ruskin is a suburb of Tampa. It's the entrance of the Tampa Bay. So he decides he's not going to get onto the highway, not onto 75. He's going to drive on back roads to get up there. He makes me lay down in the back row while he drives to the safe house that he knows of. We pull up to a resort type area. It's a marina and there's also some restaurants. And he pulled up behind one of the restaurants by their dumpster. And he has me move to the second row, and it's captain's chairs in the second row. And he says, I just forgot, I have to write a letter for my parents. I forgot to write a letter for my parents. He had written a letter for the children and he had written these things. And he had told me that the letter for the kids was between him and the children. Only for him and the kids. And now he needed to write one for his parents. Okay. So he ties me to the captain's chair. He had looped around my right arm. He had tied the black nylon rope that he still had from the beginning of the ordeal and tied it around my right arm and tied it around the chair and looped it around my injured left arm and then looped it back. So he's in the back third row scribbling away, and all of a sudden rope comes up around my neck. Because of the way he had tied me, my hands were up in front of my chest. And because he had tied my arms in that way, his rope came and grabbed on my fingertips, my fingers, straight across my fingers. So as he's trying to strangle me, my hand is caught in the rope, preventing him from strangling me. When they found me, and one of the things that the prosecutor had asked and said was they added the charge of him, another charge of attempted murder for him strangling me because they didn't realize that the marks on my neck on the sides were rope burns because it didn't go in the front and there was no rope mark in the front. So while he is strangling me in the car behind a dumpster, and I said, this is ironic. Now I'm going to be strangled behind a dumpster and, there's water all around us. He's going to dump my body in the water, something like that. He all of a sudden stops strangling me and dives through the car into the driver's seat and takes off. And I'm gasping for air. And I look back and there is a black pickup truck where normally a car would not be. And this Good Samaritan had seen us on one of these back roads, stayed far enough behind for Trevor to not realize that he was being watched, and they called 911 when he pulled up behind this dumpster. So he pulled out of the resort area and drove down the road closer to the Gulf of Mexico and pulls under a house that's on stilts. Those houses that are raised up and you park your car underneath of the house. He parked underneath this house. And he said, "This is the safe house." And I'm still tied to the chair. And he moves from the driver's seat over to the passenger seat. So he's sitting catty corner to me so he can turn and look at me easier. And I'm sitting behind the driver's seat. And he's looking out the back rear window and he's looking and he says, they're coming. And I said, "Who's coming?" And he says, "The police." And I really, at this point, did not think I was going to get rescued. Mm-hmm. And he says, "There's a Chevy Malibu back on the street watching us." And it didn't look like a police car or anything. Here I found out later it was. They were waiting for backup to get there, and they were closing off all the roads in the area. My ex-husband started talking all kinds of crazy nonsense, and he started slitting his throat as the skin is opening up. And it's the strangest thing, though, because as he's slitting his throat, it's just parting the skin, and it's just this big gap of blood coming down. And he says, "This is what true love is. I'm laying my life down for you. You don't deserve this."
Oh, wow.
At this point, I'm turned on the passenger side of the car. It was like SWAT-like. Guns drawn, bulletproof vest, screaming at him, like screaming they want to see his hands. Put your hands up. At one point, before they surrounded the car, though, my left arm, where it was looped through, I was able to pull my arm backwards and pull it out of the loop. So I had my hands up in a defensive way against my ex-husband because he has the razor blade and he's slitting his throat and he was coming at me with it. And so when this happens, when the SWAT comes around him, I'm looking to the passenger side and all of a sudden my door flings open and I am swooped up and grabbed up. And here Officer Nick just grabbed me and carried me out and put me into his squad car and took off.
Wow.
So on March 13th, 2017, I was found alive. Was not expected to be found alive. Officer Nick was like, "Oh my gosh, I can't believe you're in my car right now." And as we drove down the road, they had the road barricaded and all of the officers were there. And they moved the police barricade and I can see the officers cheering as Officer Nick and I come through. And I said, "Do my parents know?" And he says, "Your parents know and they're here. Everybody knows, Alisa. Everybody knows." I said, "Okay." And he says, "I can't wait to tell my wife. She prayed over me this morning. My wife and I were praying together for you. And she put hands on me and said, 'Lord, you can use my husband in any way today to help this woman. Please use him.'" We had about a 5-minute ride and we called Officer Nick's wife. So we arrived at the police station and I was taken into a room and interviewed for about 2 hours. And my parents and my pastor were in another room. And then we went and collected evidence. They were able to find my phone. But I was in a bathing suit cover-up when they found me. And no shoes. and mud and blood all over me. And when they took me into the room with my parents, my dad took his shoes off and took his socks off and put his socks on me. And somebody else took off their jacket and wrapped it around me. And yeah. And a woman detective gave me a banana. So, yeah. Then I was taken to a crisis center in which I was, a rape kit was performed. Yeah. And then I asked, where are my kids? Where are my kids? Your kids are fine. They're with detectives. We've had to get, statements from your kids, and you'll get your kids tomorrow. We are collecting all this evidence. You'll get your kids tomorrow. That night, I have no cell phone. I have no ID. My purse, everything I have is evidence. My house is evidence. My car is evidence. Everything I have is evidence. My parents were in a hotel, and they took me back, and I slept in between my parents in their bed. When I had the rape kit done, they took my clothes that I was wearing, the cover up that I was wearing. And my parents came, they went to the store while the rape kit was being done and bought clothes for me. So I wouldn't, they had clothes there at the crisis center, but they were like donation clothes. My parents got me fresh things. And so to say all of that I went through is not even the most horrific part of the story. So the next day, we wake up and we get a phone call that we have to go to the courthouse, that I have to go in front of a judge to get my kids. And I am told by the judge, we didn't know where you were, and we have taken custody of your children. Your children are now in the system. Florida State has custody of your children. You are being charged with inadequately supervising your children because they were found without adult supervision.
Oh my gosh.
Because my parents lived in Pennsylvania and because his parents were residents of the state of Florida, they placed my children with Trevor's parents, where the parental alienation continued. My children were watching the movie Gone Girl because his parents had them watching it to say that I framed,
oh my gosh,
their father. Yeah.
How long did they have them?
It took me a year.
Oh my word.
And $150,000 that my family paid in private attorney. We paid because when your kids are in the system, you have to wait to complete everything that they are requiring of you. They had me do 3 psych evals because my ex-husband said that I had mental health issues.
Wow.
He said that I was pregnant. I was not pregnant, but did the state ask me to go take a pregnancy test? You better believe it.
And this is after he's been arrested?
He's been arrested and charged with 11 counts.
And they're taking his word for,
yes.
Okay. Oh my gosh.
In addition to this, I was gag ordered because the media over me being missing and everything else. So I was gag ordered. My children taken, given a case plan, going for parenting classes, domestic violence education, I had a domestic violence advocate from when I was in the shelter 6 months before and was doing all the program through their outreach center. And they came to every one of my court hearings. The head of the domestic violence organizations in Florida came to my hearings to say she has done everything. She's had a case plan. She's had a safety plan. You're the ones that didn't believe her. Mm-hmm. You're the ones that forced her to co-parent with the man that she told you was dangerous. And you didn't believe her. And now you're covering it all up by stealing her children and gag ordering her so it can't come out.
Mm. Wow.
Yeah. After a month of my children being at his parents' house, it came to light. They had lost their children due to sexual abuse in the 80s here in Pennsylvania. How they didn't catch that. It also came to light that the children were in communication with Trevor from the jail through his parents. So his parents knew that the kids were going to be moved. So what did they do? They moved the children before the state could. They moved them to Trevor's best friend's house. Now, my parents relocated to Florida to be there to be my support and help. Would they background check my parents? No. My pastor offered to take the children. Would they background check my pastor? No, they would not. Any of my friends who had been willing to take my children while they investigated me and made sure my kids were safe with me, they would not. But because his parents moved the children without the state's running background checks, they then had to do an emergency background check on his best friend, and they passed it. And they said, we don't like to keep moving children. They're moved there now. And that's where they stayed for the next 11 months. The youngest 3 came home first. It took 4 months, which they said was the most amazing outcome they've ever seen in a case. They've never seen anyone get through the system in 4 months. We paid for every single thing out of pocket because if we had waited on the state to drag their feet and pay for it to be done, it would have taken a year. Mm-hmm. So because we paid for everything out of pocket, all of the providers all of a sudden wanted to see me like the next day. Yeah.
Amazing how that works.
So I would have had them back sooner, except a false abuse report came in.
Alisa, I am like, I cannot. Okay. Yeah. Keep going.
Okay. So I was being supervised by my mother and supervised by my pastor when my mother was not available. I would get 1 day a week with my children. My mom would fly from Pennsylvania to Florida 3 weekends a month and spend 1 weekend at home, and the pastor would be there to supervise me. Well, during supervised visits, his best friend called in an abuse report saying that when the kids came back, I showed my private area to the 3-year-old. And I said, so did I do this in front of my mother or did I do this in front of my pastor? Which one was it?
Oh my gosh.
So the state has 60 days to investigate. So although I completed everything on my case plan, they couldn't bring the kids back home until they had cleared that up, and they drug the full 60 days for that. They had affidavits from my mother and from the pastor that I was never out of either of their sites. Then my oldest daughter, 14, came home. She was diagnosed, both of my older 2 children were diagnosed with severe parental alienation. The information that the state had given to their therapist was even causing more harm because here the therapist had no idea that mom was an innocent party in all of this. They made it out that I'm a nut job who has all these mental health issues, on no medication, that I should have been on medication, that I am not safe for my children to be with. Not that I was charged with inadequate supervision because I was kidnapped. That information was not given. Instead, in all of their reports and all of their doctor reports, it was that I'm bipolar and that I am not safe for my children to be with. Although there are 3 psych evals that disprove that. Their therapists, their doctors, no one would speak to me. Even though I still have my rights, my parental rights have not been terminated. My children were enrolled into school 2 years behind the grades that they were supposed to be enrolled in.
What?
Yes. And the state allowed this because his parents said that I didn't educate my children, even though there was plenty of records of their education. So my oldest came home. Her and I were doing, when she got diagnosed with severe parental alienation, at this point, the recommendation was the amount of therapy that she needed to undo was something more than the state's insurance could cover, that Medicaid, it was not something a Medicaid provider could handle. And that the amount of trauma and abuse had continued on even after the kidnapping had happened. That my children's parental alienation actually ramped up worse after my ex-husband was arrested. So the state agreed for them to pay to undo the damage that they did. And she came home, and about 3 months later, my 12-year-old, who then at that time then was now 13, was able to come home. The fear was that if he came home, that he would overpower me. And because he had such hatred towards me, that I would not be safe with him in the home. And he was able to transition home. We had a team come in home, a family reunification team to come in home. And Jeff and I had gotten married a week before he came home because I said I could not, I couldn't see possibly bringing him home unless Jeff was there. And I wouldn't move Jeff into the home until we were married.
Yeah.
But Jeff and I are, I'm truly in love with him. He is the one that God sent for me through all of this.
I'm so glad.
Yes. He is. He has been my rock, and he stood through all of this.
That's amazing.
We had met 3 weeks before the kidnapping.
Oh, wow.
We met the week I was held at knife point.
Oh my gosh.
Yes. And he was, concerned for my situation. And he checked in with me every day over those 3 weeks. He had helped change the locks at my house because, there were concerns about my ex-husband. And, he just was, I'm looking out for you. And it was clear, I didn't let my guard down till probably about 6-7 months of realizing this man is very smitten on me and he'll do anything for me. And I love him for that. And he would come to church he started coming to my church because he knew that was the only time he would be able to see the kids. And so that whole time that the kids were in the system, it gave time for him and I to have time to really get to know each other. And then for him to really see the kids and grow into being their dad. Like he is dad to those kids, all 5 of them.
Good.
Yeah. So he's amazing. So we rebuilt our life again. So Jeff and I then built this amazing life for 6 years together. He helped with, getting the kids to all their therapy appointments. I worked, he worked. And then it got to the point where we were working so much, and he stepped back from his career to help more with the kids and be there for them and get them to school and from school and help with homework and get them to therapy appointments and just be there. And I was able to work more on my career and really just thrive in that way. And for 6 years of rebuilding and having this wonderful calm, well, 5 years, because it was 1 year of no kids and then 5 years, I went to every single court hearing. Maybe missing 1 or 2 because we were on vacation and I wasn't going to let that man ruin my life anymore. But I went to every hearing. He fired 7 attorneys.
Not shocking.
No. They had to take away his phone privilege multiple times, his writing privilege multiple times, because he continued to try to contact from behind bars. Yeah.
Oh, man. I wanted to take a moment after this episode to talk about one of the biggest issues facing victims of domestic violence and abuse, and that is the systems that uphold the power of abusers. Many people are unaware of the prevalence of domestic violence and how systemic it can be. There are victims every day that seek help and don't get it. Sometimes it's because the people they went to for help didn't believe them. Sometimes it's because there's nothing they can do. Our laws and systems are broken. They are not built for victims, and unfortunately, it often has to be the absolute worst case scenario to get someone to pay attention or to do something. We mourn the women that are killed at the hands of their abusers, but we fail them countless times before it gets to that point. If leaving were made accessible, in other words, if we focused on prevention instead of rehabilitation, how much further along could we be? How many victims would live long enough to become survivors? If you or someone you know is experiencing domestic violence, please know that you are not alone. There is help and there is hope. Please visit the show notes for more information and resources. Thank you for listening to The Human Experience. If you enjoyed this episode and you'd like to help support the podcast, please subscribe, share it with your friends and family, share it on social media, and rate and review it on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. You can also support the podcast financially by going to my website, thehxpod.com, linked in the show notes, and clicking on Donate. It takes a lot of time and resources to create this podcast, so every little bit helps. Everyone has a story, and I'd love to hear yours. So be sure to check out the show notes for more information about how to stay in touch. Do good and love well.